What's up, guys? Coach Miles here from My Performance. For this Whiteboard Wednesday, we're discussing time sets, using time sets to prepare for peak performance. So first and foremost, what are time sets? Put simply, time sets refer to performing as many perfect reps as possible in a specific time frame. Specific loads and time durations can be used to encourage specific physiological adaptations and training outcomes depending on what each athlete needs most. So now that we know what they are, why use time sets? First and foremost, for sport-relevant conditioning and work capacity. So while we're still not convinced that there would ever be such thing as sport-specific training in the gym in regard to general strength, power, and hypertrophy, we've said it tons of times, every athlete squats, hinges, presses, pulls, and lunges. Special endurance work should definitely mimic the demands of each athlete's respective sport. So for example, to put it in perspective for you, it wouldn't really do much good for a football lineman, a volleyball player, or a shot putter to be performing long duration sets, say 30 or more seconds, with very submaximal power outputs when this does not mimic the demands of their sport in any way, The durations are way too long and the power outputs are way too low. Time sets can also be used to increase rate of force development. So again, producing a lot of force is awesome, but in the constraints of sport, no matter what sport you're playing, you must be able to do so quickly. Peaking. So typically, time sets are not something we're going to use in the general prep phase for any athlete because they haven't really developed a base of strength or power yet. Once they've done so and we're getting closer to competition, then of course we can start to use techniques like this to make sure they can take all that strength and power they've built and learn how to apply it quickly. Encouraging competition. So as you'll see in the coming slides, when we're doing these time sets, we're not using very heavy weights. So if we just prescribed a typical 8 sets of 3, it could be easy for an athlete to just go through the motion because it's all they have to do in order to complete the reps. Going ahead and applying a time constraint to these sets will encourage them to try to beat both themselves and their fellow athletes set to set or week to week and encourage competition. And as we know, competition breeds success. Max strength is the mother of all qualities, but the athlete who can apply it the quickest will truly dominate. So you have two athletes, say an offensive versus a defensive lineman, and they can both squat 500 pounds, but it takes the D lineman 10 seconds to complete that rep, and it takes the offensive lineman 2 or 3. Of course, the offensive line is going to dominate because you don't have 10 seconds in a football play to be able to produce that force, It has to all happen in the blink of an eye. And that could be applied to any sport. That's just an example. Last but not least, the fastest and most explosive athletes in the world can all contract and relax their muscles the fastest, and time sets teach us to be able to do so. So how to use time sets? So it depends on the periodization scheme you're using. All credit goes to Coach Cal Dietz here. That's where we learned these time sets from. And if you're using his triphasic block style periodization, he's using these time sets in his low force, high velocity peaking block, which is 55 or less % of 1 RM on the bar. He still has his moderate load day on Monday, heavy load day on Wednesday, and lighter load day on Friday. And each of those has corresponding time duration. So if you're using his periodization style, you can refer to the following slides and charts. If you're using something like a conjugate style approach of periodization, you may want to put these time sets on your dynamic effort days. That's up to your prerogative as a coach. Within the session, you're going to want to put these earlier in the session when you're fresh, even though it is a little bit of conditioning. We still want higher power output, so we don't want to be fully fatigued going into these sets. Sport relevant range of motion, this is up for debate, but there are a lot of studies suggesting that things like quarter and half squats are better for power development and a vertical jump, as these are more sport relevant joint angles, we'll say, that athletes will actually be in on the field. So once you've done all your GBP and you've gone through your whole off season, now that we're starting to peak, you may want to incorporate some of these more sport relevant ranges of motion. Personally, we still like to typically have one full squat day or full range of motion day in addition to these partial range days. But again, that's up to your prerogative as a coach. And as we mentioned, these are week to week and session to session. These exercises are flat loaded as far as the duration and the load on the bar go. So we're not trying to add weight or go for longer. We're trying to keep those two things the same and make it denser by getting more reps within that time. That makes it very easy to measure progress session to session and week to week. So here, for example, you see our boy Mike. He's doing banded half squats over here. He has about 45% of 1 RM on the bar. Again, hockey player, so he's using 10 seconds per set. And we threw the bands on here for accommodating resistance, specifically using bands instead of chains to make this athlete even more reactive. Because again, bands are going to help train him be able to switch from eccentric to isometric to concentric even faster. than he would be without using the bands, and this is going to be a great peaking method. So we can watch this video here real quick. You can see Mike, he's not just falling down into the hole, he's pulling himself with his hamstrings, glutes, and hip flexors, keeping his posture perfect. Every rep looks the same, driving up to lockout and then reversing right away into the next rep, becoming, as we mentioned, extremely reactive. Week to week and session to session, he'll try to beat the number of reps he was able to get during this set. So now we're going to look at some of the different qualities you can train and who they might be relevant for. So again, every single chart from here on out will have, this is that moderate load day, 35 to 45% 1RM, heavy day, 45 to 55% 1RM, and then lighter day, 25 to 30% 1RM. So strength speed, extremely relevant for shot putters or really any type of thrower, football lineman or volleyball player, depending on what type of load you want to use. Here's some different durations that could be appropriate that correspond with these weights. Moving into speed strength. Now this may be more appropriate for football skill players, right? Your receivers, your defensive backs, things like that. Baseball and softball players and 100-meter sprinters. You can see the loads have not changed, but the durations have increased slightly compared to our last slide there, where we were working strength speed. Now moving into strength endurance, a little bit more relevant for hockey and basketball. As I mentioned with our example of Mike, he's a hockey player, so he was on the lower end of this heavy day here, 45%, but we did have accommodating resistance added on, and that's why he was working with 10-second sets, right? If at any point you want to pause and look at these different charts for reference, that's fine, or even better, these are all listed in Coach Cal Dietz's Triphasic Training Manual as well, if you want to pick that up, and they're explained even deeper throughout the manual as well. Moving on now, endurance strength, a little bit more relevant for sports like soccer, lacrosse, and swimming athletes who are swimming distances of 50 to 200 meters. Again, you can see these percentages of 1RM have not changed, but these durations obviously have increased because now we're training a different physiological adaptation. Moving on, now we have moderate endurance, which is something like a 400-meter runner or a 200-plus meter swimmer. You can see here again, the intensities have not changed, and they won't change from slide to slide, but all that's really changing is the duration of how long each set is lasting. Now training moderate endurance. And last but not least, we have longer duration endurance. So a distance swimmer, a rower, or 800-meter plus runner. These are some of the longest sets that we can be doing, 40, 32, or 47 seconds per set, depending on how heavy you're going and percentage of 1 rep max on the bar. That's it for today, guys. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on social media, email, call, whatever it may be. Hopefully you can put these methods into your training, and again, it will help you prepare yourself or your athletes for peak performance.